Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Catalyst Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Sunkiss, and with me once again is my co-host, Aria F. Wright.
Hello.
Aria, we're
Hi.
back again.
Hi. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday, everyone.
Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. How you doing today?
I'm blessed. You see, I got my God versus my enemies
Oh,
T-shirt.
nice. Nice. I like it. I like it. I
You
like
know,
God your body, because woo, Lord Jesus, because
yeah,
woo, these are some really, really crazy times. So,
yeah, really crazy
every
times.
day, every single day, and every time I think about it, I praise God. Every single
Every day.
time. Every.
So before we get into it, I just want to remind everyone, please definitely get on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, comment at the bottom, comment tonight during tonight's podcast. Also on Facebook, go to Catalyst Conversation with a K, and also Catalyst Lifestyle on Instagram. Tell a friend to tell a friend. It really does help the program. So, Aria,
Yo.
tonight we are discussing social media. Social media is the topic. How appropriate that we're on here tonight using platforms of social media
Yeah.
to help get the word out.
Yeah. Social media. I mean, social media is so insane because, of course, we're of a certain age where we are what we call pre, or what is it, pre-social, pre-digital,
Yeah.
So, we were talking earlier today, we were like, all right, so how do we communicate with people? How do we communicate with people before social media?
Right.
And it's so funny because just thinking about that, I think back to like all of the different technology that really just started coming into play in like 2000. And that was about as old as my child, my son. So, these guys are digital first, and everything else to us is like, okay, I got to learn this. I got to learn that, because for me, it was like fax machine, I remember working at Motown Records, and we're working with the DJs, and we would have to fax everything over, and it was like, and then we'll have to call and be like, "Did you get that? Did you get that?" So it was always like,
Right.
super delayed. And then we even had a conversation with my girlfriends a couple of weeks ago, and we were like, "How did people communicate when there was just horse and buggy? If you wanted to ask somebody out, did you get in your horse and buggy and go to their house and ask them out, and then drive all the way back to your house and your horse and buggy defeated because they said no?"
That was probably it. That was probably it. But I mean, like, even to your story, using like a fax machine, like, let's fast forward a little bit and where we started getting smart devices, right? But it wasn't like the smartphones that we know now, right? So
Right.
you had the pager or the beeper, right? So you get the number coming across, and then you could use, like, what was it, like 43770 was hello when you turned it upside down.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's how you started the message. That was just like maybe the first message.
We thought we were doing something. We thought we were
Yeah.
doing something. It was the two-way, and it was the SkyTel two-way. It was the SkyTel two-way pager. It was the Sidekick. It was the what was the
Flip
other
phone, the
flip,
Motorola flip phone.
the Microtech Starlight or whatever, like all these different crazy things. I mean, we really thought we were doing something, but that's nothing compared to what's going on right now. But I think you got a cute little gem to show people
Let me
right
see.
now.
Hold on. Let me see. Let me dig in the bag for a minute. Let me blow the dust off of it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I know about that right there. That's a
Tiny.
BlackBerry.
You were big time if you had a BlackBerry, because
Yo.
BlackBerry was just for people that really had business to do,
Right.
and street business, some real business to do.
Some real business. Real
Yeah.
business. Right.
Actually, I know people that still have BlackBerries and they still use them and they still swear by them.
But it was like strictly for email, though. It was just like you
Yeah.
would get some photos on there, but the photos were trash. The photos were trash. They were awful.
Yeah, and now they're coming out with the iPhone 12, which is supposed to have 45 different cameras and angles and thinning lenses and all these kind of different filters built in. It's just like, okay, nobody is real anymore, and everything can be an illusion. You can really paint the picture that you're on an island right now, and you're actually sitting in your living room talking to people.
So you could definitely appear to be somewhere that you're not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also like the attachment to the smartphone, to your iPhone or to your Galaxy, like, these are the things that, like, are they really, are they helping to shape us moving forward? Are they really empowering us, or is it more or less of an underlining hindrance for all of us? And that's what we're going to be discussing tonight.
Yeah. I mean, I think for the most part, like, it's definitely made life easier. It's made communicating with people better, but to a fault, really, because it just kind of takes a lot of the personal interaction with people. Because, I've had guys that tried to date me, talk to me only on text, and it's just like, come on, man.
It's like you could do better than that.
Yeah, I'm gonna need you to pick up the phone and call a couple times, a day.
Can I hear your voice?
I mean, and then to even worse, like I noticed, like my son's age, some of them kind of lack the skills to actually follow up and call and actually pick up the phone.
But their follow up is texting though. That's just it. Or messaging, or going through a platform like DMs, right? In your Instagram, or get it on Facebook. Like that's the way to connect. But like, again, like, is it shaping us going forward in a positive light or a negative light? And I think it's doing both. Yeah. So I think we should go to the professionals for that.
Yeah, we definitely need to go to professionals, because I don't know what I'm talking about. All I know is what I see, and I see that people have taken this thing a little bit too far, and I want to reel it back in, but I know it's not up to me, and I know it's a whole different beast and things that I don't even understand about it. So let's get into it.
All right, so let's bring in Tamara.
Tamara. Hi, Tamara. Come over and frame a little bit more, honey.
Yeah, move over to your right. Move over to your right. There you go.
There you go. I think I got it.
Spotlight.
This is live TV. Live TV. You got to be able to make those adjustments.
There we go. I feel like I'm centered.
Yeah. So Tamara, you're what we would consider an expert, right? So I want people to really understand, like, who you are, what you've done and what you've contributed to this digital era, because you've got so many things to your credit, and I wouldn't even do you justice. And just a quick background, like, Tamara is one of those people who has done everything. She's done everything in every different area of life. So she comes to us with not only a well-oiled background in digital strategy, but just the other soft things to round it out. So please tell everybody who you are and what you contributed to society.
Big question. So my name is Tamara Gardellis. I am a 20-year advertising marketing veteran. I've worked in advertising agencies from SpikeDDB, Black-owned agencies like Carolyn Jones, Vigilante, which is actually owned by Leo Burnett, through to RGA, which is where I really got my digital foundation. Currently, I lead strategy for a agency by the name of Campbell Ewald. But I've also done work on the client side. Aria, you and I met each other at Seagram's Gin, so we were using digital and social technology nearly 20 years ago, prior to Facebook, launched on the scene. But I'm what you call an integrated strategist. So that's digital strategy, brand strategy, and consumer strategy. I do a lot of work on perception. Obviously, I'm in advertising, how these technology and these tools impact consumer perception. And that's sort of where I play.
That's awesome. She does a lot.
There's a lot in there. I've been very fortunate in my career, from Nike and Exxon Mobil and State Farm to spirits industry, which is where my focus was for many years. Seagram's Gin and Martell Cognac. Again, so it's been interesting seeing how these platforms have developed. Ari and I worked together on something called Seagram's Gin Live nearly 20 years ago, which was a 27 city. Sorry, didn't mean to do it to you like that. It's
I should put it on blast. She put you on blast.
15 years.
God damn.
Sorry. I jumped the gun.
We try to make sure we keep everybody, young audience too.
I'm here, so I'm happy. I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate it. And life has been good, so I'll take that.
No doubt. But you remember the Walk of Fame, right? You remember? I mean, you know, we've got friends and family who got their start there. But that was prior to Facebook. That was prior to social media in the way that we know it now. Way back then, we recognized the power of community and the power of sharing. The platform was set up that there was a video host, a VJ at every concert who would record consumer interviews, feedback from people who went to the concert, and we would send these videos out on email. This is even, again, before the video platforms existed. So it's been a long time, and it's been a interesting journey to see how these technologies have developed, how they've impacted culture, and how advertising and marketing have co-opted them.
Absolutely. Well, we definitely want to save some of that goodness for, this conversation. So don't shoot your whole load right now.
Slow it down a bit.
Next up, we have my brother, Stanley Lumax. What's up, Stan?
We can't hear you. Turn your mic on. I can't hear you.
There you go.
There you go.
How you guys doing?
We're awesome.
Good. So Stanley Lumax is and I'm going to coin the phrase, a marketing and advertising guru entrepreneur. His background is in, he's worked with Nike. He's also worked with the NBA and also Beats by Dre. And he can give you some more detail and background on that. Stan, why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself and how your expertise is relevant to tonight's topic.
How you guys doing? As Kevin mentioned, I am a marketing and advertising guru. I'm also an entrepreneur. Nah, stop. I'm totally joking. I'm not that. I don't take myself that seriously. But I've been in advertising and marketing for about 15 years. Started out at a really small agency called Chisholm and Mingo Group. Worked my way up to a bigger multicultural agency called Don Coleman, which was then Global Hue. Went from there to Ogilvy and Mather. From there, I went to Wieden & Kennedy. I think I found my spot when I got to a place called Anomaly. I worked on brands like Nike, Converse, you name it, like a ton of really cool things, and actually really got to discover my ability to be a hybrid. On paper, I was an account exec, but I always had a passion in photography. So Anomaly allowed me to do a lot of things, both on the creative and business side. Left Anomaly, went to Nike, ran basketball for the East Coast. Basketball was definitely one of my passions, so it's something I continue to consider as I look for opportunities. Left Nike, went to Translation, where I was the group account director on the NBA, the Brooklyn Nets, Indiana Pacers, a company called Monumental Sports that owns the Wizards as well as the Washington Mystics. I left there. I opened a restaurant called TERANGA, which is on 110th and 5th Avenue if you're looking for West African food.
The food is delicious.
And then most recently, I am the managing director of Climate, which is the internal agency that Complex Media Networks is starting.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so tonight, again, we are discussing how social media is basically either empowering us as Black people or hindering us. So I want to throw this question out, and Tamara, I'll ask you to go first on this. How many times, just from a personal standpoint, are you on social media?
I'm on social media pretty frequently. I check it, throughout the day. I'd probably hit it, if I were to estimate, we're probably looking about 15 to 20 times throughout the day.
Okay. Do you find yourself hard to detach from social media, or is it just pretty like not too commonplace?
I mean, overall, I think, and I think Aria and those who know me can say that I've detached to a pretty significant degree. I no longer post, and have really taken a break over this last year. So in terms of what I post and what I share, it's fairly limited. But I get a lot of information and a lot of opinions. I'm in the job to keep up with what people think, and so I use social media, quite often, just to keep tab on who's saying what and what's going on, so I can stay on in the pulse. But I don't share very much anymore. I'm sort of focused in passion points. So I've been an anti-police brutality advocate for many, many years, and so there's certain circles that I contribute more. But in terms of checking out, who's saying what stories are breaking, and I compare, let's say Fox and CNN, just so I can keep my story straight. A lot of information gathering.
Okay.
So it's pretty frequent.
Okay, Stan, how about you?
I'm pretty frequent on social media. I think for me, I usually work in industries where culture is prevalent in the brands I work with. So I really just want to know what's going on. And I think it's important for me to be able to comment on culture. So from that perspective, I tend to be very, very observant on social media, even if I'm not necessarily going crazy on it. I also, I try to differentiate my personal from my business. So I have a private account for myself, where, I may post photos of my family, my children, whatever. And then I have another account that's a little bit more social, because it may be promoting one of my businesses. So I try to keep those two separate.
It's so cool that you said that, because just when you said that, I remembered, I'm thinking about all of your accounts that I follow, because I'm like, wow. Because I definitely was watching your daughter's birthday and all the things, and then I flipped to start watching African Chop House, and I guess thinking about my journey in social media, I've always blended my business with my personal, my social, and everything, because I've always been fortunate to be able to work in an industry and do things that have been all inclusive. So. The people that I work with are my friends. The people that I'm friends with, I usually work with. Like Tamara said, I worked with her when Pernod Ricard was my client when I was working at Frontline Marketing. And I've met so many people. We had, and just as you mentioned, the Seagram's Gin Live tour, Amber Forrester, who was on our show, talking about relationships, was the VJ that Tamara was mentioning. I wanted to point that out. So, I mean, and it just comes full circle. We
name is discovering Amber.
100%. Like we all for this show, we always try to bring our friends into play, because it just makes sense, because we have so many people who are doing so many amazing things, and they've got so many great stories to tell. So it's interesting that you have separated it, and I understand that people are very private a lot of times with what they share. I have friends that have 2 accounts. One of them is blocked, the other one, or private, and the other is, public for their business. So, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel that like some of my personal, I do keep it personal. I keep it private, where just things that like
what?
Like what? It's private, so that's why I'm not telling you.
People want to know.
Well, if they want to know, they can make comments and maybe ask me some private questions. We could probably get to that at the end. But my point is that for me, I feel that I think everyone has it depends on the individual and the lifestyle that you have and also the business that you have. You know, some people tend to just do a lot of fun things and show that they're doing fun things. And we all know that life is a balance. Like there's good times and bad times. So everything's not always sweet. But I mean, in the level of promoting positivity, I think that's also a good way to approach it. But of course, if you have your own business or, you know, if it's inclusive where, you know, your friends interact with your business and vice versa, then you can do that. And then as Stan said, as far as daughters are concerned, the content, you know, definitely would be curved from curve to a positive standpoint, right? You never want to, you know, promote something outside of yourself that, you know, is not relevant or prevalent to your children or family.
And then I think for me also, sometimes I think, you know, I'm past the point of caring about followers, you know, like I'd rather have an intimate conversation with people I actually know and care about. And if I'm sharing a moment, you know, one of my daughter's birthday or whatever, sharing that with friends and family. I don't necessarily need, you know, a bunch of randoms, you know, all in my shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
you know, I mean, it's no, I feel like sometimes, you know, my kids walk down the street and they're like, oh, you're Stanley's kid. And you know what I mean? Like that shit just
Right.
gets
That's
real,
a lot of attention.
just gets
Unwanted
real
attention.
weird. So, you know,
that's because you're Mr. Brooklyn, like you're Mr. Everything. If you wouldn't be Mr. Everything, then people wouldn't be, you know, harassing Zoe. Come on.
I'm literally just trying to feed my daughters, man. Like,
I mean,
but on the flip side of that,
mm-hmm.
you know, I do have an open account African Chop House, and I mean, I guess I'll get into it when you ask the question, but like that's been great from a social media standpoint in terms of creating a community.
Right.
Before I had a restaurant, a brick and mortar restaurant, I had African Chop House, and that literally was just the community. And you know, people would DM me and ask me like, where are you located? And I'm like, I don't even have a restaurant yet. So when I did open a restaurant, I was able to take that digital community and give them a place to go. So from that perspective, obviously being open and sharing the different experiences that we curate has been a blessing.
Yeah.
There's one aspect, and I'm sure Stanley's familiar with these tools. So we've talked about, you know, sort of personal. We've talked about how we stay up on culture and through brands. You know, we've talked about, you know, our businesses that we promote. But in the line of work that we do, advertising and marketing, we also have access to a whole bunch of tools. So a lot of work that I do around consumer mindset and consumer perception uses social. So we have access to tools that can analyze conversations in Facebook or conversations in Twitter, you know, across all the social handles that can actually carve out profiles of people. So you can say, you know, you can take African-American women with no children who live in the Southeast and compare how they feel about certain topics or what's important to them in comparison to another profile. So there's that extra sort of seeing behind the curtain that I think advertisers and marketers have access to. And that's another thing that I use social media quite a bit for.
So with that said, do you feel that from a personal standpoint, like individuals that have their accounts, do you think they should start looking more into analytics? Because like Stanley said, like he doesn't really care about how many likes or followers to a certain degree. And, you know, a lot of times that you have people that if they don't have enough likes, if they don't have enough followers, then there is, you know, that disconnect or sadness or mental stress, right, that is caused. And I think a lot of, you know, especially like young teens, like anywhere between the ages of like 11 to 19, 20, 21, go through that if they're not getting that attention. Say that again, Aurea.
It's even older than that. These kids are and I say kids, I use the term like, you know,
or preteens.
Yeah, I mean, but it's like it's younger than that and it's older than that because people really associate likes with they take it too seriously. They take it too literally. And you know, like you said, if they don't get enough likes, then they feel like it's, you know, the worst day. And then they often post things and say might delete if they don't get enough likes, they delete it. You know what I mean? So it's just the way that they think, and they're influenced by the television, and you know, they're setting their standards against Kim Kardashian, who has a gajillion followers, and you know, everything that she does completely just goes off the rails, and they compare themselves to that. And if they don't reach that standard, then they feel like they're a failure. Their post isn't worth, you know, the light of day, and it's horrible.
But I mean, if I could say something, I think the reality is social media is a tool, the same way a hammer is a tool. You know what I mean? Like you can build a house with a hammer, or you can destroy a house with a hammer. And the reality is a lot of people are who they are, right? So, you know, social media just amplifies that. And if it's good, then you're amplifying good. If it's bad, then you're amplifying bad. I mean, you know, I think about being in a fraternity in college, and it's the same thing. If you're good, it's amplifying your good. If you're bad, or if you're insecure, or if you're looking for something that you didn't have, you know, it amplifies that, you know? I mean, we joke all the time about dudes that go over and, you know, they're corny as hell before they pledge the fraternity, and, you know, they join the fraternity and they're still corny as hell. They just have letters, you know what I mean? And I think like, that's what social media is about. Like a lot of people are changing, you know, taking all kind of crazy angles and stuff just so people will give them a like. Like, I mean, you know, I think it just reflects people's insecurities and their desire for attention and affection. So it really amplifies who you are.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with you, Stanley. You know, that there's definitely, you know, I think of social media as both a blessing and a curse. And I understand the amplification, but I do believe that social media has a tendency to almost act as a drug, because there's a connection between dopamine, right? So it's not only that people are independently sort of vain and selfish. You know, we've got millions of years of evolution working behind, you know, the dopamine releases that, you know, bring you to being likable or found attractive or trying to find
just like any other drug, right?
Right. And so because social medias and these likes are tied into a dopamine release, you know, I think that we're dealing with something that might be a bit different than what the world has seen before, you know, and does have a very dangerous side to it. But like I said, it's a blessing and a curse, you know, depending on what you're using it for. But I do have pretty significant concerns about some of the younger ones and just the level of addiction. And again, it's designed that way. These algorithms are designed that way. You know, you've got a brain trust of people who are working on what headlines and what colors and you know what you need to receive in order to bring you back in. It's a pretty advanced and pretty developed system that's really focused on getting your attention.
Well, Tamara, in reference to social media connected with companies, right? So let's go back to likes and follows for a second. So like record companies, streaming, all these, you know, different ways of like putting an artist at the top of their game. You know, a lot of that has to do with likes and followers, right? So they're gauging, my opinion is they're gauging that artist on, you know, not the quality of their music or the quality of the production that they're actually putting out, but how they're liked or how they're followed. What is your opinion about that? Like, do you feel like that's where things are going now, where the substance of someone's artistry is truly not being seen, or it's not even worried about? Like, people are more geared to likes and follows and how popular they are by that standard.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm a music consumer. You know, I'm not in the music industry. You know, my industry is brand and branding and marketing. So my answer really stems from a personal point, and I'm a child of the 90s and, you know, a hip hop head from the 90s. And so you know, my general perspective is that, yes, content and quality is just definitively being, you know, influenced by likes and followers. But, you know, I'd have to say that it's how record companies use this knowledge and use this information I've got a general familiarity with. But I mean, you know, they translate into sales, so it's hard to, you know, it's hard to deny the indicator, right? We call them KPIs or indicators. You know, if you've got 10 million people liking your, you know, your content, then from a record company standpoint, you can certainly expect that those people, you know, that those likes translate into sales. But personally, yes, I am. I am disappointed at the quality. You know, I'll say it at the quality of lyrics, you know, and rhyme that has been, you know, coming out. And I think social media and just again, not my topic of expertise. So before I get myself in trouble with today's hip hop fans.
No, I think a lot of us here can agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of monetization, like, and I think that's key from Stan, again, from an entrepreneurial and business standpoint. How can entrepreneurs and individuals that have created platforms on social media for their business protect their intellectual property without it being stolen or copied?
Get a good attorney. And also just, you know, educate yourself on the business. The reality is whenever we click on, you know, a social media platform and add our IP, whether it be images, photography, video,
That's there.
It becomes theirs. So, you know, that's a calculated move that you're making every time you do it. And as long as you know that, you can get ahead of it and you can figure out what things you're willing to share and what things you're not. You know, I think the reality is as we continue to grow, especially if this is a conversation about us as Black people, we need to start looking at ways to own the platforms that we're on and support those platforms. You know what I mean? Like right now, you know, everyone's going crazy about Clubhouse. And I think one of the really interesting things about, you know, literally, you know, I literally remember each of the platforms when they came out, right? I remember all the way back to like Friendster, right? I remember everyone talking about Friendster, and then, you know, it was MySpace, then it was Facebook, then Instagram was probably the first one that I really, you know, cared about because it was about photography. It was about sharing your images, and, you know, anybody that knows me knows I always have a camera. And now we're talking about Clubhouse. And I think the reality that is kind of scary about it is people are on Clubhouse, you know, 24 hours a day, exchanging ideas and really providing, you know, amazing insight. And that insight, whether they tell you or not, is being, you know, recorded, captured, things of that nature. So again, you got to think about your IP and what information you're willing to share with the world, because whether you believe it or not, whenever you post it, whenever you say it, you know, someone's documenting it. And I think like that's just one of the things that, you know, at an early age, I'm trying to get my kids to understand is, you know, don't post anything that you don't want the world to see, or that you may regret, or that you may want to take down, because a screenshot, a record, a screen record, all of these are tools where people can gain access to things that you think you might have taken down and share with people when, you know, when you've moved on from that phase of your life. You know, I have a lot of young cousins that post the most random stuff, like the most savage stuff. And I'm always, you know, hitting them like, you know, dude, you don't really need that up there. I know it seems cool right now, but please just take that down. Your account is public. You're going to be looking for a job. And, you know, you're going to put yourself in a bad situation. Like what happens when the guy that's looking to hire you goes on your website or your Instagram, and, you know, there's a photo of you doing something that's either illegal or just doesn't show any common sense. Like what happens then? Is it worth jeopardizing opportunity for clout?
Yeah. It's really not. And they don't understand that. Just what I was saying earlier when you know, these kids say might take this down later. They think that because they're taking it down, that it's going to go away.
It's gone, right?
And I just want to point to one of the comments in our I think from YouTube. Ebony Shears, Clubhouse is dope because the community gets to play a huge part in setting the rules of engagement. So I think that also one thing that we didn't talk about with regard to this whole thing is influencers. A lot of people forget that influencers are paid to promote things and to give their POV. So it's going to also influence people's, decisions to post something or to buy something. And it may not be their own opinion. It may not be their own something that they would purchase in real life. It's that they're being paid to do so. So I wanted to also just kind of derail the conversation just a tad bit about that, because a lot of these companies and a lot of people just emulate these posts. They emulate these people who are posting these stories and these fictitious, these lives that don't exist. And, people are following that stuff, and they create these personas on screen that are not real. So, if you die in a movie, you're dying in a movie, you come back in the next episode. If you die in real life, you don't come back. And that, I feel like that's the thing that people are not realizing when they're posting these stories and these things that just don't make sense for real life.
Yeah, I mean, when these memes and GIFs, or some people call it GIFs, and use TikTok, when you're creating these items and when you're using these platforms and they're being misused or not even being thought about, as Stan said, you're not really thinking about the future. What tends to happen is this. A lot, Tamara brought up algorithms, and, when you're coding and gathering this data, it can be used against you, right? And it could be used against you in the future. Like Stan said, if you're looking for work or you're trying to get employed or even start your own business. And then also, it also gives a negative focus on you as an individual. And right now we're talking about Black men and Black women participating in these areas, and how is it going to hinder you long term? So it's just very wise for us, I think, going forward, as as technology gets even deeper and deeper into social media, and it's being used as the analytical tool for what's trending and what's not trending. So next question is, if we had more Black creators in a place, would it change the scope of Black social media or social media on a whole?
I think we have a lot of Black creators. I don't think, as with any platform that's existed in America to this date, there are Black creators. It's just a matter of being able, like you said, to monetize that platform and be able to use it in a way that is beneficial for yourself and for your team. But I don't think we're at a dearth or a lack of Black creators. If anything, I think it's quite the opposite. When you look at this younger generation, when you look at what 7 and 8-year-olds can do in terms of cutting content and creating videos and editing things down, it really is phenomenal. So I think that in that way, it is a strength. It's a strength for the community. And now it's just, a matter of being able to sort of gear that to the right places where it's able to see the light, right? So, I mean, a lot of these platforms, Netflix isn't a social platform, obviously, but they've got a very, very large focus, on ensuring that Black content creators have access. So, I mean, I think Stanley's right. I mean, the opportunity to create a platform which we own, and which we use our influence to make real is one avenue. But within the current platforms that are available, I think Black voices, and Black people and brown people, are responsible for probably over 50% of the content that's out there.
I'm so sure of that.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think we're at a loss for content creators. It's just a matter of how we get our content creators positioned. You know.
But I think with COVID too, a lot of these companies, what I'm noticing is that they're searching the web.
Mm-hmm.
They're seeing what's trending and what has kind of picked up momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Just general, users who are sitting at home, bored to death, or just, whatever else they're doing at home, and they're making these stories around products that are in their house, or just making silly, videos, but to share with their friends, and the brands are picking them up and they're just using them in their campaigns. So, I mean, what do you think about that? I feel like that's the cheap way out, but are these guys getting paid for this? Like, tell me some more about that.
I don't think they're getting paid.
Here's the reality, right? Here's the reality. Anything that someone creates, right? Like, if I'm, let's take for example the gentleman that was on the longboard and he had the ocean spray and I always forget the name of the damn brand, Fleetwood Mac song playing. At the end of the day, if Ocean Spray or TikTok or any of those brands decide they want to utilize that content, they're going to make him an offer, and depending on how he values himself will be the number that he gets, right? Like, they may offer him $500 and he may say, awesome, I need that. They may offer him a lot more. But the reality is it's always going to be less than he deserves. And it really determines, it really depends on his value of who he is and his understanding of the business in terms of what he gets out of it. It really varies depending on the individual. And I think the reality is, if someone makes a video, with no intent on monetizing it and they're able to make a buck off of it, it may not be a big deal to them until they see 10 years down the line that video is still being used and being promoted. Then it becomes, well, wait a minute, I'm not getting it paid for that. Oh, but you signed a release in perpetuity. So forever we can use this. And I think like those are the nuances that people don't take the time to understand.
Right. And did you see, with regard to the Fleetwood Mac song, did you see the one with the Starbucks, the pumpkin head? So there was someone on a skateboard, and they have a Starbucks cup in their hand and a pumpkin, their head in a pumpkin or whatever. And it's like they're riding along, and then they're just like, and then they throw the Starbucks on their face. I don't know if the Starbucks is using that, but it was genius to me, because it was like forcing the brand to pay attention. And now it's like, okay, are you going to follow that person? And are you, as Starbucks, going to even capitalize on that? And in return, are you going to make good on what this person that was really creative in their house and they weren't sitting at a boardroom table, coming up with ideas? Are you going to make good on what this guy is bringing to you?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you guys it's definitely fair. Go ahead, Tamara. Go ahead.
So my team was one of the brand architects for the new Got Milk campaign. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen that, but it's completely UGC. So we had to consider what celebrity meant. You look at the Got Milk campaign of the 2000s and what celebrity meant and how, that came to life. We had to consider what that means today. How celebrity is used today, and really it's a whole different thing. So the Got Milk campaign, to Aria's earlier point to the conversation had, it's an entire advertising campaign that's built off of UGC. And so
what is UGC for?
I'm sorry, user generated content. So there's companies that advertising agencies work with, who the advertiser will go to the company and say, I'm looking for videos like this. And that company goes out and comes back with, 10,000, 5,000, 2,000, 20, whatever, however many different clips to choose from. But that approach, specifically during COVID, when productions couldn't be done, we couldn't, advertisers couldn't shoot commercials anymore. And so we generally really relied heavily on that approach and used a lot of those videos. So from, I think Lowe's and Got Milk, I mean, there's a lot of them during these difficult times that have used that approach.
Yeah, and Ebony came back and said the Ocean Spray wasn't the one who benefited from the video until they capitalized on the moment by sending him a truck full of cranberry juice.
Right.
But of course, streams of the Fleetwood Mac song have gone through the roof, and it's also opened up a new generation to Fleetwood Mac, who's an amazing musical credit to the history of the world. So, let's talk about the intersection.
It's that versus effect
in commerce.
Yeah, it's that versus effect, right?
Yeah. Bringing anything that we love and cherish from our era back to someone and back to this younger generation in a forced way, they're going to reject it. But on the contrary, if they find a way to incorporate it and they start pushing it, then it's genius for them. And then it just takes off like wildfire.
Yeah. So, what about the duo? Those the two young dudes that with the Phil Collins song. It's amazing, to see how kids are discovering, content from back in the day, and how they're using it. They hosted the awards recently, right? Like from the videos of them reviewing songs that they'd never heard from 20 years ago. So I mean, we've spoken a lot about the negatives and the dangers of social media, but I mean, there's quite a few positives on the other side too. I mean, when you look at the amount of influence that the Black and Brown communities have, you can see it. You can see it on Twitter. You can see the impact. And brands are responding. Politics are responding. People are responding. Black Lives Matter. I mean, it's as much out in the street as it is, online and on these social platforms. But I mean, the power and influence that those who are strong in this area can yield, I mean, is amazing. To see what the kids did on TikTok, undermining Trump's rally, and his response got him talking about, their activities on Twitter in a national or international forum of power. So, I mean, like everything, that can be both a blessing and a curse. It's got both sides,
Yeah, social media definitely has empowered many of us, especially during this time, during COVID and during quarantine, and the uprise of awareness for police brutality that's been bestowed upon us from the beginning, but even more so now. And roughly like, I think it's like 1.3 trillion. We spend like $1.3 trillion in the economy, right? Just purchasing goods, and us countering that from using social media, I think is very relevant. So the positives are platforms like this, right? Where, we can get together and speak as a tribe and exchange information and make sure that people are aware of that and they can spread that information, and the information continues on and on.
I saw Ebony's comment about Ocean Spray, and the only thing I would ask her to think about is, I mean, I can't remember the last time I either saw any marketing from Ocean Spray or heard anyone mention Ocean Spray. So I think even before they sent the truck, they received a ton of free publicity. They received their brand in the center of pop culture. So all those benefits were there prior to them, lifting a finger. Totally agree in terms of streams for Fleetwood Mac, but, we also have to consider, from a marketer's perspective, when you're able to put yourself in the center of culture without doing anything, and it's quote unquote organic, like that's the biggest win you can have.
100%. I agree with that. Because honestly, a lot of these brands, and I've sat in these meetings, they have no idea how to connect with the culture, and they don't hire people that know how to connect with the culture. So they're constantly, they're
disagree.
Look how many brands there are in the world that are tone deaf, that don't get it, that do not know how to market to people. They target people and they talk at people and around people, but they can't quite get it right. And they spend thousands and tens of thousands of dollars on millions of dollars on research just to get it wrong, and just to come out and say something really ridiculous, but yet they've got this kid that's 20 years old who's figured it out for them. And then
that's also another avenue when you talk about the power, is social media, is it beneficial or harmful to the community? These advertising agencies are scooping kids up. You know what I'm saying? There's entire career paths, that have been started. And I mean, I can speak to when I started out in the industry, during the early days of, when corporate America recognized the power of hip hop, and all of us were employed and all of us were getting, money from corporate America's obsession, with hip hop and the power of hip hop. The same thing is now happening with social. These kids come right out of school and, with a little bit of work and a little bit of focus, you can have an entire career track. So I mean, in advertising agencies, I'd say 70%, of people who work there are under the age of 30. At least the ones that are doing the day-to-day work. So your experience with excuse me, social media is one of the things that they rely on. So, be it a strategist or be it a community manager or be it a copywriter, that's writing these posts. I mean, there's several different, lines of again, career paths or, opportunities that are not necessarily built around, how many followers you have or what your own personal engagement numbers will look like, but just being able to use your understanding of this game to further your own, professional and to just break in. How do you get into advertising? How do you get into marketing? You show your skills in this particular area, and you've got to weigh in. So.
Yeah. And Valerie, my sister, and Ebony, one of my best friends, are having this whole conversation on the chat about the culture and the brands, and I agree with Ebony's point. Like, it didn't register for her. Ocean Spray didn't register for her until she heard about the truck. But then, just the song itself is a great song. So. It just kind of caught on, and it transcends the generation. So it bridges the gap between all these different, people who have one thing in common, and that's music, the love of music. Right. So I agree with all of that, bringing all of the old songs back that we love so much, because the songs right now are pretty sucky. But sorry.
It depends
who
you're talking to.
Let's not do that. Let's not do that.
What?
I mean, look, let's just look at it from the perspective of music is
universal,
brand marketing as well. And it's not made for us, right? Like the music that's on the charts, honestly, like, I hear a ton of, guys that I mentor talking about, I'm not even going to name the names, but it doesn't move me. You know what I mean? But then I also have to realize that it's not made for me. You know what I mean? I'm 43. I got a bad back and I got daughters, you know what I mean? Like nobody's making music for me anymore, you know what I mean? So that's why I still listen to the stuff from the 90s,
I am a big Migos fan. I listen to all of the people
but
that
it's not made for you. But you know what I mean? You listen to it, but
understand what they're saying. I mean, I have a 20-year-old son who listens to all that stuff, and he just
but do you enjoy it?
He also loves that stuff, but then he also loves Nas, Biggie, Jay, because of me. Like
because of you.
Yes, I've definitely listened to him singing the songs in his room, and we'll get in the car. Like one of the first concerts I took him to was a Sade concert, because someone called me and had tickets for me last minute, and the venue was around the corner. So I was like, "Come on, go with me. You're my date." And he was like, "Ah," and he got in there and he was like, "I know this song. I know that song. I know this song." 2K, the 2K games also play a big part in that, because they have a lot of those songs on there. So these kids that are gamers, that it's embedded in their brain, and it's you know, it's constantly on replay all day because they never move from in front of that console.
But I think the point that you made that I connect with is the fact that, look, regardless of whether it's social media, music, you know, whatever it is, we as parents and as mentors and, you know, OGs, old heads, whatever you want to call us, it's our job to expose people to as much as possible and let them make their own choices. You know, if you don't play, you know, the best example I can give you, right? Like when I was a kid, you know, I grew up with African parents. Both my parents are from Ghana. When, as if you can't tell, when I was a kid, like, you know, my dad on weekends would play Fela Kuti. And I remember being a kid and hating it. Like I literally was like, damn, why every Saturday does he have to play this music? I hate it. And when I moved to Brooklyn, the first year I was living in Bed-Stuy, I remember there was the African Arts Festival or whatever. And I just happened to go and I'm walking around and I hear Fela Kuti from, you know, down the way. And the impact it had on me was like, I can't even imagine, I can't even explain it, but like it hit me a totally different way. It's like one of those things that if I had never grown up with that music, if my dad had never played it for me, I wouldn't have connected to it. So again, I think like part of our jobs is to expose our children to vegetables and music that they may not like, because as they mature, it becomes a part of who they are. You know, my older brother, half brother, whatever, grew up in the Bronx. I'm surprised you didn't do all this, Kev.
There's no need for me to do all that.
But you know, he when he would come visit me, he always played, you know, hip hop. He played Big Daddy Kane. He played the Jungle Brothers, and you know, this is music that stuck with me. So by the time I got to college, and you know, I hung out with you know, older cats that were, you know, into that music, and they were always impressed with my knowledge of hip hop, and it was because of my older brother and the stuff that he played for me. So I think like it's important for us to just give exposure, and again, that's whether it's music, whether it's culture, whether it's career paths. Like, you know, one thing I didn't have as a child, because I had immigrant parents that were really just trying to survive and trying to just put food on the table, was exposure to a ton of different things. So part of why I love living in New York and, you know, don't plan on leaving is just because of the access that my children have. You know what I mean? Like whether it's art, whether it's music, whether it's, you know, literally walking around the neighborhood and being familiar with, you know, individuals that are creators. You know what I mean? You know, my daughters can look at a Chris O'Feely painting and you know it. They know the difference between that versus a Keith Haring versus what I didn't know any of that. And those are the things that I think help create their foundation so that as they get older, they can make educated choices. And I think, again, that I'm saying all this to say same thing with social media, right? Like, you know, they need to understand the difference between fame and, you know, actually creating, you know, a system of wealth for yourself, right? Like if you're just on social media for likes, that's a big difference between being on social media, because the amplification of social media can help you build a brand.
Right.
So true.
Yeah, and to sum this up, to come full circle, and I think Stan, you're definitely led into us ending off with, it is very important for us to use social media as a positive source to expose not just children but adults, right? Because a lot of and Aria, you mentioned this earlier, as far as it goes beyond teenagers. There are a lot of people that unfortunately make bad choices using social media. But Tamara, as you said, social media can be used for good. And it's definitely, it could be a pro and help to excel us and empower us, right? Especially in today's day and age, as far as gaining information, not just looking at, you know, memes or like little Twitter, you know, screenshots, but also doing your research and comparing notes and taking truth from lies. And I think that's important. So, but this has been a great conversation. We can go on all night about this.
Yeah, because we didn't even talk about the political political side of it and being influenced by that and the polls, because we definitely got to talk about the polls before we go. Voting.
So yes,
Influence your vote.
so yes, don't be misled by social media. Again, whatever you see, go and do your research, ask questions, make your phone calls to your council people, find out who is in position, judges, lawyers, Congress individuals, and definitely go out and vote November 3rd. You have to vote.
Yes. And just to that point, I'm sorry, I know we're over, but what I did an experiment this past week, listening
She
to
did an experiment.
Sean Hannity, and because my mind was blown, because the way that they lead you down these conversations and the way that they analyze everything that happens in the news is a far cry from watching CNN and watching CNBC, because those are the narratives that I agree with, but the other ones, they will make you believe that you're a middle-aged white woman in a rural area and your life is in danger, and they will give you 75,000 reasons why, and this is all propaganda, So it's like you definitely have to do your research, and you have to watch the sources that you're getting
comes from,
because. And like I said, I did this as an experiment to see what was, what the other side looked like. And it just was a really eye-opening experience, listening to Republicans all week talk about, what's happening in the news. So definitely don't allow these, these CNBCs and the Foxes out there to influence your decision. Do your own research and make sure that you're making an informed decision and something that you agree with.
Exactly.
I mean,
Arm yourself with knowledge.
If I could just add to that, I think I'll give a positive and a negative for social media. From a positive perspective, I use the example of what's going on in places like Nigeria, Namibia, Congo. There's, what do you call it? Civil unrest, the police brutality that we're seeing here in the US, they're seeing it in Nigeria as well. And I would probably argue even worse, but if it's not for social media, I doubt that a lot of us would even know that it's going on. So I think from a communication standpoint, it's an amazing thing that we're able to share that sort of information. From a negative perspective, I think like as a Black community, we need to, start doing things behind the scenes more. I think like we're really quick to jump on social media, and just start spewing, different things that we believe to be true and leading people down the wrong direction before we have our shit together. And I think like, the reality is everything doesn't need to be broadcast all the time, right? Like I'd rather conversations be had behind the scenes where we, connect, we get all on the same page, and then we deliver a plan, on social media for amplification. But right now it's just too splintered, and I don't see that doing any good for us.
Yeah. Well, Marlo just said in California you can vote now. There are lots of places where you can actually vote, do early voting. I'm not sure if New York and New Jersey are. I don't believe New Jersey is. But one thing I also want to mention is that make sure that if you do your mail-in ballot, you put it in a place that is designated for mail-in ballots, and not some random box that's just left open. Make sure that you're guarding that with your life before you deposit it into a mailbox. And then if you are voting in person, or you're voting and you're taking a ballot and putting it in a designated mail-in ballot drop box, make sure that there's no writing on it. Make sure that when you go to the polls and if they write anything on your ballot, anything at all, make sure that you get a new ballot, because that marks that invalid. So just, read up on everything that makes your vote count and everything that will invalidate your vote before you actually sign on a dotted line.
And I'll add to that really quickly. If your neighbor is elderly or incapacitated to the point where they cannot leave their home, please help them out and get their ballot. And, as you go and vote, drop their ballot off for them, because every vote counts.
Yes. Yes. Every vote counts.
This is splendid. Tamara, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Stan, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Both of you were awesome. I definitely would love to have you back again. This conversation, like I said, can go on, but we are over time right now. So, and before we leave, tonight is our 10th episode. So I'm going to raise a glass, and I want to thank both Tamara and Stanley for being our guests.
Oh, you sending those bottles then? Huh?
Yeah. Call my people, call your people, and you'll have that. So cheers to everyone.
Cheers.
That's foul, Tamara. Like they didn't even.
Man.
They could have sent us something in advance. I mean, come on.
Oh no, it's coming. It's COVID. It's COVID. The mail delivery.
Yeah, so we can toast with y'all. Come on, man.
The mail delivery is slow, but I don't know what happened. You're supposed to get it yesterday.
Oh, it's in the mail trick, right?
I want to thank. I definitely want to thank Aria Wright for being my co-host and working so hard and diligently for helping to put all of this together. And I also want to thank all my friends and family for their support.
Yes.
And most of all, this would not happen without our viewers. I don't want to say followers. I want to say our viewers, our viewers that participate, who give their input, who offer advice, tells us where we're going up, we're going down. Thank you so much. Definitely want to see another 10 episodes into infinity, and pushing the word here, pushing empowerment for Black people. And with that said, I'm going to go off and say all we got is us. And I want to say thank you to our guests once again. Aria, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Go to YouTube, subscribe, hit that like button.
Can I say something, though?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Stan.
Just to be specific, right? Us is whether you're African American, whether you're born in New York, whether you're West Indian, whether you're from the continent, like we are all us. All that madness that's going on where they're trying to divide us, like people really need to think like this whole concept of bots, like there are bots out there literally
creating a false narrative.
We feel like we're different. I mean, look, African descendant of slave, African on the continent, African in West Indies, we're all African, we're all Black. And
exactly.
I mean, that's that
whole conversation.
Yeah. Don't get confused by the semantics.
Yes. Agreed.
All right.
We are us.
We are us. All right. So again, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we love you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much, and we out.
Thanks, guys. Yay. Damn.